The year is 1889. A chilling wind blows through the cobbled streets of Braunau am Inn, Austria. In a nondescript house, a child is born, unremarkable, except for the piercing blue eyes that seem to hold a strange intensity.
This child, Adolf Hitler, would grow up to cast a long dark shadow over the 20th century.
His early life was marked by hardship and an unsettling air of resentment. His strict father, a customs official, clashed with young Adolf's artistic aspirations. The death of his younger brother, Edmund, when Adolf was just 11, left an emotional scar on the future dictator.
Even in my youth, I displayed a volatile mix of charisma and anger, a potent cocktail that would later intoxicate a nation.
He excelled in school initially, but soon grew disillusioned, abandoning his formal education altogether. The seeds of his twisted worldview were already being sown, fueled by a toxic blend of German nationalism and anti-Semitism prevalent in Austria at the time. In 1907, a young Hitler, fueled by dreams of artistic grandeur, arrives in Vienna. He envisions a life of painting and architecture, but fate had other plans.
Rejected twice by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, my dreams lay shattered, feeding the resentment within.
The cosmopolitan city became a breeding ground for his prejudices. Vienna was a city of stark contrasts, opulent palaces and overcrowded slums.
Scraping by on an orphan's pension and selling postcards, I was drawn to the underbelly of the city.
He immersed himself in radical newspapers, absorbing pan-German nationalism and anti-Semitism. The seeds of his hateful ideology were taking root. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 offered an escape.
I saw it as a chance for redemption, a chance to prove my worth to the world.
The Great War left Germany a shattered nation, defeated, humiliated, and burdened by the crushing weight of the Treaty of Versailles. It was in this cauldron of anger and resentment that Hitler's star began to rise.
Discharged from the army, I drifted back to Munich, a city teeming with political extremism.
In 1919, he joined the fledgling German Workers' Party, a small, obscure group that shared his nationalist and anti-Semitic views.
My talent for public speaking, honed in the trenches of the Western Front, soon became apparent.
His fiery speeches, laced with nationalist rhetoric and promises of restoring Germany to its former glory, resonated with the disillusioned masses. He tapped into the simmering anger and humiliation felt by many Germans, offering them a scapegoat for their woes, the Jews whom he blamed for Germany's defeat.
The beer hall brawls and street fights of the early 1920s served as a brutal apprenticeship, forging the Nazi Party into a formidable political force.
The year 1933 marked a turning point in German history, a descent from the flickering hope of democracy into the abyss of totalitarian rule. Hitler, appointed Chancellor in January, moved swiftly to consolidate his power.
The Reichstag fire, a suspected act of arson by the Nazis themselves, was used as a pretext to suspend civil liberties and unleash a wave of terror against political opponents.
The Night of the Long Knives, a brutal purge that took place in June 1934, cemented Hitler's grip on power. Under the cover of darkness, the SS, Hitler's elite guard, rounded up and murdered hundreds of perceived enemies, including Ernst Röhm, the head of the SA, the Nazi Party's paramilitary wing.
The message was clear: absolute obedience or death.
Germany was now firmly in the grip of a dictatorship, a regime built on fear, propaganda, and the systematic suppression of all dissent. The stage was set for the darkest chapter in human history. Section 5, A Nation Transformed, the grip tightens. With absolute power in his grasp, Hitler set about remolding German society in his own twisted image.
The Nazi Party, with its chilling insignia of the swastika, permeated every aspect of life.
Propaganda, disseminated through radio, film, and newspapers, relentlessly hammered home the Nazi message. Germany, a nation destined for greatness, had been humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles and was being held back by internal enemies, primarily Jews and other undesirables.
The economy, devastated by the Great Depression, was revitalized through rearmament and massive public works programs.
Unemployment plummeted, and a sense of national pride, albeit a warped and dangerous one, began to take hold. Hitler, hailed as the savior of Germany, had cast a spell over the nation. But beneath the facade of order and prosperity lurked a sinister reality. The systematic persecution of Jews and other minorities, the suppression of free speech, and the brutal crushing of all opposition. Section 6. The drums of war, expansion and appeasement. Fueled by a toxic ideology of racial superiority and driven by an insatiable thirst for Lebensraum, living space, Hitler set his sights on expansion.
In March 1938, he marched into Austria, his native land, annexing it without firing a shot.
The world watched with growing apprehension, but a policy of appeasement, driven by a desire to avoid another devastating war, prevailed.
Emboldened by his bloodless victory, Hitler turned his attention to Czechoslovakia, demanding the cession of the Sudetenland, a region with a large German population.
The Munich Agreement, signed in September 1938 by Germany, Britain, France and Italy, handed over the Sudetenland to Hitler in a futile attempt to appease his ambitions. It was a betrayal of Czechoslovakia and a catastrophic miscalculation that would have dire consequences for the future of Europe. The winter of 1939-40 saw an eerie period of inaction on the Western Front, dubbed the Phony War. But the storm clouds were gathering, and the world braced itself for the inevitable onslaught. Within weeks, Poland was crushed, overrun by the German war machine. Britain and France, bound by treaty obligations, declared war on Germany, but their response was slow and hesitant. The world held its breath, hoping against hope that Hitler's appetite for conquest had been satiated. But the Nazi dictator, driven by his twisted ideology, had other plans. On September 1st, 1939, German forces employing their devastating new tactic of blitzkrieg, lightning war, smashed into Poland, shattering the fragile peace that had held since 1919. World War II had begun. Section 7, Blitzkrieg and the Shadow over Europe.
Section 8, The Holocaust, A Stain on Humanity.
While the world watched in horror as the Nazi war machine rolled across Europe, a parallel horror was unfolding in the shadows, the systematic extermination of European Jewry, a genocide that would forever be known as the Holocaust. Driven by a fanatical ideology that viewed Jews as parasites, a threat to the purity of the Aryan race, the Nazi regime embarked on a campaign of unimaginable barbarity.
Jews, stripped of their citizenship, their property confiscated, were herded into ghettos, overcrowded and squalid urban prisons. From there, they were transported in cattle cars to concentration camps, vast killing factories scattered across occupied Europe. Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, names that would forever be etched in the annals of human infamy.
Gas chambers, mass shootings, starvation, disease. The methods of murder were varied and ruthlessly efficient. By the war's end, 6 million Jews, 2/3 of European Jewry, had been systematically murdered, a chilling testament to the depths of human depravity.
Section 9, The Fall of the Third Reich.
The tide of war began to turn in 1942. The German invasion of the Soviet Union, launched in June 1941, bogged down in the face of fierce resistance and a brutal winter. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 brought the United States into the conflict, tipping the balance of power decisively against the Axis powers.
From the beaches of Normandy to the rubble-strewn streets of Berlin, the Allied armies closed in, relentlessly pushing back the once seemingly invincible German war machine. As defeat loomed, Hitler, holed up in his underground bunker in Berlin, refused to accept reality, issuing delusional orders to phantom armies.
On April 30th, 1945, with Soviet troops just yards from his bunker, Hitler committed suicide, bringing his reign of terror to an end. Section 10, Echoes of the Abyss, Lessons Unlearned. The world emerged from the wreckage of World War II, forever scarred by the horrors it had witnessed. The Holocaust, a genocide of unimaginable scale and barbarity, stood as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred. The Nuremberg trials established the principle of individual accountability for war crimes, a landmark moment in international law. But have we truly learned the lessons of the past? The echoes of Hitler's hateful rhetoric can still be heard today, a chilling reminder that the forces of intolerance and extremism are never truly vanquished. We must never forget the past, lest we be condemned to repeat it.